After a natural disaster, some type of catastrophic event, death of a family member, or, a fire burning down your house, rarely do we hear people say, well, I saw that coming. Sure, I'm glad I prepared. No, that's just the mentality of most Americans. Mentality that when it comes to something serious like hurricanes, Ebola, anything that's going to possibly be completely detrimental to us, we essentially just think that it's never going to happen, or that type of thing would never happen here. And especially with Ebola, people are like, that's an African thing, it's an African problem. That's a type of outbreak would never happen here. Well, while researching the level at which our hospitals, healthcare workers, biohazard facilities, and other related entities are prepared in the case that we do have such an outbreak, I was actually very shocked, to be honest with you. Especially after us having an outbreak not so long ago. You would think that they would have prepared a lot more. Right now, we only have about 19 level 4 biohazard facilities that can handle Ebola patients. That is only about one hospital per 2 states. And some of those 19 hospitals can only take a max of 3 patients at a time. Some hospitals aren't even equipped with the correct personal protective equipment, which is goggles, gloves, all of those personal protective, the suits and everything like that. Only a small number of healthcare workers are even trained to handle Ebola patients. That's why we saw the nurses back in 2014 rioting, essentially, not going to work, because they weren't trained and they realized that this was not going to be good. Following the 2014 outbreak, there were promises to create vaccines, look into trying to find some type of treatment or cure, ensure that every single hospital had the necessary training and equipment, and of course the biggest promise from the president at the time was that the CDC was going to create a SWAT team of sorts that would respond within 24 hours to any case of Ebola. Well, as with so many promises we hear from DC, they were broken. We were seemingly in a worse situation now than we were in 2014. How is this possible? Well, it's the normalcy bias, or as some people like to call it, the everything's gonna be alright bias. When people underestimate or discount both the possibility of a disaster occurring and its possible effects, this often results in which people fail to adequately prepare for any type of disaster. And on a larger scale, that would be the failure of our government to, include us, the general populace, in its disaster preparations. Since such a disaster has never occurred, people judge their future according to how things have been in the past. We saw the same type of calamity occurring with Hurricane Katrina, even as it became strikingly obvious that the levees were about to collapse. Thousands of people still stayed in their homes, directly in the line of oncoming waves from the water. Residents of New Orleans had never seen the levee systems break or any type of failure with the levees, so they simply just did not believe it could happen. As a result, 2,000 of them died in the flood. Then the recent housing crisis was largely triggered by the normalcy bias. Since housing prices had never declined on a national scale any more than a few months, everyone felt safe about buying a home. Even though home prices had tripled in some markets, people still believed that they would continue to go up and up and up. But we all know now what occurred. That same mindset is being played out with our national debt. Now, despite the fact that spending is absolutely out of control at a level where bankruptcy would only occur, concerns from the investors are actually very mild. People have always seen bonds as being 100% and safe, unlike stocks where they do fluctuate. They will always retain their face value. Situational awareness is the complete opposite of the normalcy bias. It involves having a full perception of your environment and a comprehensive view of what may transpire in the near future and what actions that you may need to mitigate in your situation, because other people may seek to provide you with false information on any situation, especially on the internet. That's what people like to do. Situational awareness requires you to be the guardian of your own life and your family's life, because we only have limited control over the fate of some type of natural disaster or crash in the stock market or something like that. Disaster can strike from 1,000 different directions. The fault rests with us. When we see danger coming and we do nothing to get out of its way, there is only one person we can blame. And I think you know who that is. So, I know people think that, oh, this is just fear porn or whatever the case may be. I wouldn't be wasting my time if this wasn't something serious to be talking about. And we're now starting to see the mainstream media coming out with bits and pieces of what's really going on. Well, they give you a little bit of what's going on with Ebola, but as I have already shown in my previous videos, it's pretty obvious that the outbreak and what's going on is being suppressed. And the only thing we can do is to take matters into our own hands and be prepared to the fullest extent. Just by information is your best weapon, really, or prevention, however you want to look at it. And go through, like my last video that I talked about the ways to prevent it, things that you need to stay away from, and those type of things. In an article put out earlier today, the World Health Organization emphasized the progress in the fight against Ebola in the Eastern Congo, even as Doctors Without Borders warned Tuesday that the efforts to find a trace of cases to previous ones are largely failing. That means that they essentially still have no idea where these are coming from. That almost is like unbelievable. Usually you can trace it back to someone you had contact with, but in this case, they cannot track 80% of them back to someone with contact. I believe that has a lot to do with the problems that they're having with the mistrust and things like that. I feel that people are probably dying before they are even getting diagnosed. Well, that has happened. We've had 5 healthcare workers have died since the outbreak began in August. That's a big deal for healthcare workers to die. They go on to say that more than 1,200 people have now died in the second deadliest Ebola outbreak in history. The virus containment efforts are particularly challenging because of the high volatility security situation makes it too dangerous for surveillance teams to access some areas. The real number of Ebola cases is likely to be even higher because of the difficulties in tracing cases, said the speaker from the Doctors Without Borders. I'm actually hearing the same type of things here, so I wonder where they're hearing these things. I'm assuming they have internet. People act like it's from the government because there's a patent for the Ebola strain. Well, the patent was just so they could do the research for any type of vaccines. Yeah, I'm sure it was partially so they could make money for the vaccine, but that's what the patent was. They didn't create the Ebola. And I've looked into that. I've looked into the vaccines. People are saying the vaccines are killing people. I don't see that to be true either. The vaccine actually still hasn't even been deemed okay to be given by the FDA. I feel that if it was something that they were just using for money or something, the FDA would just approve it. Why not? But they are not. So, that's not saying I trust Merck. They've done shady things, but there is a point at which you need to put your government did everything aside and make a decision on whether you're going to trust the healthcare workers. Because even if you fall into that, oh, well, these are the people that are creating it and they're doing it to kill them, do you really believe the healthcare workers are still going to continue doing it? I don't. I think they would stop working. I am very questionable on certain vaccines, but I would never tell anyone not to get them. I would tell them to do their research, and that's where people are going wrong. People that don't have the qualifications or the knowledge are giving people advice that they should not be giving. What I do with my kids might not be what is best for you. And that's why I try to steer clear of anything involving those type of things. Right now I'm seeing a lot of people, some people getting arrested for this, but some people are still on YouTube and actually promoting a product called MMS when it's chlorine dioxide. That's bleach. Plain and simple. It is bleach. And they are marketing it to tell people that it pretty much cures everything, but a lot of them are saying that it cures autism. And there's documented proof that children have died of this because their parents thought that they were doing the right thing, or that they've lost all of their intestines because of it. It's straight bleach. And for people to continue doing stuff like that, you've got to be very sick in the head to act like that's okay. It's called like Miracle Minerals solution, but it's chlorine dioxide. And they try to say, oh, well, people use it to filter water. Okay, yes, they use those tablets. They have tablets. Or they say you can use bleach to purify water. That's a 5-gallon bucket or a 50-gallon bucket of water. And they are using the same amount to give a child in just a small little amount. That is dangerous. It's irresponsible. and it could potentially be homicide. And I honestly can't even believe that they're still on YouTube. But I mean, I'm against censorship, but there's a point to which you should no longer have a voice if you're going to use your voice for saying that you're curing autism with bleach, but calling it mineral whatever, miracle mineral solution. That's insane. There are people that are in the Congo that think that, those thermometers that we use that you do across the head, they think it's scanning their brains and things like that. So there are things that do get out of control, and so that makes it even much worse, because then you can't stop the spread. They're not getting treatment. I'm all about holistic medicine and things that you can try, especially like whole foods and non-GMO, things that are just healthy, come from the earth type things. But I'm not going to ever claim that it cures anything, and I've seen it on every single one of my videos. People talking about certain things that are going to cure this. I would just be very careful when you put out information like that, and where your sources are coming from. I actually have a personal story that occurred back in 2008 when I was in nursing school. One of my chemistry professors was doing some talks in Australia, and he found that alligator serum cured the HIV virus. And everybody took that and ran with it as if it was going to cure it in people. And he's like freaking out about it. He's like, no, we just cured it in a lab. You can't inject alligator serum into your body. So things like that go viral very fast. It was pretty funny because it was worldwide at the time. But just wanted to leave y'all with that because it reminded me of that. Y'all have a wonderful night. If you would like to help support my channel, there's links maybe in the description. It depends. YouTube's kind of crazy about that. But just liking, sharing, subscribing if you're not, and all of those things, anytime that you engage, even putting comments, that all helps with the algorithm. So y'all have a wonderful night. Bye guys.